In the gleaming corporate towers of downtown Phoenix, a brilliant Native American marketing strategist was about to face the most humiliating moment of her career. What started as a routine board meeting took a shocking turn when she came face to face with entitled privilege at its most destructive. Sophia Yazzie wasn't your typical corporate executive. For 4 years, she had spent her life building invaluable client relationships at Sterling & Associates Marketing, known for her authentic cultural understanding and unshakable integrity. When she encountered Bradley Sterling declaring her expendable in front of the entire leadership team, she had no idea she was walking into a corporate avalanche that would reshape Phoenix's business landscape. Sophia maintained her professional dignity in a way that would lead to consequences no one could have predicted. What began as workplace discrimination would become the most expensive lesson in corporate history. The Phoenix marketing community would never be the same after clients proved that authentic relationships are truly irreplaceable. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning light caught the glass facade of Sterling & Associates headquarters, casting geometric shadows across the conference room's polished table. Sophia Yazzie stood at the presentation screen, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had made her indispensable to Phoenix's premier marketing firm. "The engagement metrics speak for themselves," she said, clicking to the next slide. "Patient participation in preventive care programs has increased by 43% across our target demographics." Her eyes found Maria Gonzalez, the CMO of Southwest Healthcare Network, whose approving nod confirmed what Sophia already knew. This presentation was more than successful. It was transformative. Maria leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "Sophia, what I appreciate most about your approach is how you understand that healthcare isn't just about medical services. It's about trust. And trust, especially in underserved communities, has to be earned through authentic respect." The words carried weight beyond their surface meaning. Maria wasn't just commenting on marketing strategy, she was acknowledging the cultural competency that Sophia brought to every campaign. Growing up on the Navajo Nation, Sophia understood intimately how institutional messaging could either bridge gaps or widen them. Her campaigns didn't just target demographics, they honored communities. "That's exactly right," Sophia replied, her tone warming. "When we developed the Maternal Health Initiative, we didn't just translate materials into Spanish and Navajo. We worked with community elders and traditional healers to ensure our messaging respected existing healthcare practices while introducing modern preventive care." Jennifer Liu, Sterling & Associates' senior marketing manager, watched from the high corner of the room as Maria's team exchanged impressed glances. Jennifer had seen dozens of client presentations over her 5 years at the firm, but Sophia's had a different quality. They weren't performances. They were conversations between people who genuinely understood each other's challenges. "The contract extension is approved," Maria announced, her smile genuine. $2.8 million for the next fiscal year. But more importantly, we're expanding the program to include 3 additional reservation communities. She paused, meeting Sophia's eyes directly. "I want you personally overseeing every aspect of this expansion." The room erupted in polite applause, but Sophia remained focused on Maria. "I'm honored by your trust. These communities deserve healthcare initiatives that respect their sovereignty while providing access to life-saving services." As the meeting concluded and handshakes were exchanged, Jennifer noticed Robert Sterling observing from the doorway. The CEO's expression was unreadable, but his presence during client presentations was unusual. Sterling & Associates had grown to 57 employees over the past 20 years, and Robert typically left client relations to his senior staff. "Exceptional work, as always," Jennifer murmured to Sophia as the Southwest Healthcare team gathered their materials. "Maria practically glows when she talks about working with you." Sophia's response was characteristically modest. The work speaks for itself. When you genuinely care about the communities you're serving, authenticity becomes natural. But Jennifer caught something else in Sophia's tone, a subtle tension that hadn't been there 6 months ago. The office dynamics had been shifting lately, and rumors were circulating that made even the most senior staff members nervous. After Maria's team departed, Sophia began organizing her presentation materials with practiced efficiency. The conference room slowly emptied until only she and Jennifer remained. "Can I ask you something?" Jennifer's voice carried the careful tone of someone testing dangerous waters. Sophia looked up from her laptop. "Of course. Have you heard anything about changes coming to the client strategy department?" Jennifer glanced toward the doorway, ensuring they were alone. "There's been talk about Robert bringing in someone new, someone from outside the company." Sophia's hand stilled on her keyboard. "Outside hires aren't unusual. We've been growing steadily." "This would be different." Jennifer moved closer, lowering her voice. "The rumors suggest it's family. Robert's nephew, apparently. Recent Harvard MBA graduate. No real experience, but—" She shrugged meaningfully. The implications hung in the air between them. Sophia had built her reputation through 4 years of consistent results, cultural sensitivity, and client relationships that generated millions in revenue. The idea that someone with no experience but the right family connections might be brought in above her wasn't just professionally concerning, it was personally insulting. "Rumors are just rumors," Sophia said finally, but her tone suggested she understood the larger implications. Jennifer gathered her own materials, hesitating at the door. "Sophia, you know how much the company depends on your client relationships. Whatever happens, remember that some things can't be replaced by connections or degrees." After Jennifer left, Sophia remained in the conference room, staring out at the Phoenix skyline. The city sprawled toward the horizon, a testament to growth and ambition. She'd found her place in this landscape through merit, through understanding. That business success required more than strategy. It required genuine human connection. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother back on the reservation. "How did the presentation go, granddaughter?" Sophia smiled, typing back. "Secured another major contract. The healthcare initiatives are expanding to 3 more communities." The response came quickly. "Your ancestors would be proud. You're building bridges between worlds." The words carried deeper meaning than most would understand. Sophia's success wasn't just professional achievement, it was cultural service. Every campaign she developed, every client relationship she built, created opportunities for her communities while advancing her career in the corporate world. Robert Sterling appeared in the doorway, his timing impeccable as always. "Sophia, excellent presentation. Maria Gonzalez couldn't stop praising your approach during our walk to the elevator." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. The Southwest Healthcare expansion represents significant opportunities for both organizations." Robert nodded, but his expression remained distant. "I'd like to schedule some time to discuss the future direction of our client strategy department. Are you available tomorrow afternoon?" The request felt loaded with unspoken implications. "Of course. Should I prepare anything specific?" "Just bring your thoughts on how we might evolve our approach to client relations. Sometimes fresh perspectives can strengthen existing foundations." After Robert left, Sophia gathered her materials slowly, processing the subtle undertones of their conversation. 4 years of building relationships, securing contracts, and establishing Sterling and Associates as a leader in culturally competent marketing had earned her respect and trust. But in the corporate world, she'd learned, respect could be fragile when it confronted privilege. The elevator carried her down through the gleaming building she'd helped make successful. Through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, Phoenix's desert landscape stretched endlessly, reminding her of the reservation where her grandmother still lived, where ancient wisdom about patience and resilience had shaped her character. Whatever changes were coming to Sterling and Associates, Sophia knew her worth wasn't determined by corporate hierarchies or family connections. It was measured by the trust her clients placed in her, the communities she served, and the bridges she built between traditional values and modern business success. But as she stepped into the desert heat, a small voice whispered that worth and recognition weren't always the same thing in the corporate world. And sometimes, the most valuable employees discovered their expendability in the most unexpected ways. The elevator carried Sophia to the 15th floor the following morning, but something felt different the moment the doors opened. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as she passed, and the usual morning greetings seemed forced, almost apologetic. Jennifer caught her eye from across the open workspace, her expression confirming what Sophia's instincts already suggested. The rumors were true. "All hands meeting in the main conference room," came the announcement over the intercom. 10 minutes. The large conference room buzzed with nervous energy as Sterling and Associates' 57 employees filed in. Robert Sterling stood at the front, his posture carrying the weight of a decision already made. Beside him sat a young man whose expensive suit and confident posture radiated privilege. Even before introductions, Sophia knew this was the nephew. "I'm pleased to introduce Bradley Sterling," Robert began, his voice carrying forced enthusiasm. "He's joining us as Director of Client Strategy, bringing fresh insights from his recent Harvard MBA program and extensive networking experience from the East Coast." Bradley rose smoothly, his smile practiced and empty. "Thank you, Uncle Robert." He paused, allowing the family connection to register with everyone present. "I'm excited to modernize our approach to client relations. While Sterling and Associates has achieved solid regional success, I believe we're limiting ourselves with overly niche strategies." Sophia felt the words like a physical blow. Overly niche was corporate speak for culturally specific, the very approach that had secured millions in contracts and built unshakable client loyalty. "The business world is increasingly global," Bradley continued, his gaze sweeping the room but somehow managing to skip over Sophia entirely. "Success requires proven traditional approaches, established networks, and relationships built on shared backgrounds and mutual understanding." Jennifer shifted uncomfortably beside Sophia. The coded language was unmistakable. Bradley was describing the old boys' network approach that prioritized connections over competence, cultural similarity over cultural sensitivity. "I'll be scheduling individual meetings with department heads over the next week," Bradley announced. "We need to evaluate current strategies and identify areas where we can implement more conventional, scalable approaches." After the meeting, employees dispersed quickly, their conversations muted and careful. Sophia remained seated, processing the implications of what she'd just heard. Bradley hadn't mentioned her by name, but his critique of niche strategies was a direct attack on everything she'd built. "Sophia." Bradley's voice carried the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "I'd like to speak with you." She turned to find him approaching, his expression carrying a mixture of condescension and barely concealed impatience. Up close, his privilege was even more apparent. Everything from his Italian leather shoes to his Ivy League class ring spoke of inherited advantage. "I've reviewed your client files," he said without preamble. "While your results show decent numbers, I'm concerned about the sustainability of such specialized approaches. Modern marketing requires broader appeal, not narrow targeting." Sophia kept her voice level. "Could you be more specific about your concerns?" Bradley's smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened. "Well, for instance, this Southwest healthcare campaign. Focusing so heavily on reservation communities and Hispanic populations, it's limiting. We should be positioning healthcare as a universal need, appealing to broader demographics with higher spending power." The statement revealed such fundamental misunderstanding that Sophia momentarily struggled to respond. The campaign specifically targets underserved communities because they have the greatest need and the lowest current engagement with preventive healthcare services. Our approach has increased patient participation by 43%. But at what cost? Bradley waved dismissively. Resources spent on these niche populations could generate higher returns targeting suburban families, educated professionals, people who actually have discretionary healthcare spending. Each word demonstrated not just cultural insensitivity, but complete ignorance of healthcare accessibility issues and the moral imperative of serving underserved populations. Sophia realized she wasn't dealing with someone who disagreed with her methods. She was facing someone who fundamentally didn't understand the purpose of her work. "I'll be restructuring the client strategy approach," Bradley continued, apparently interpreting her silence as agreement. "We need more conventional leadership, people who understand how business really works in the modern marketplace." That evening, Jennifer found Sophia still at her desk long after most employees had left. The office's open workspace felt eerily quiet, punctuated only by the distant hum of Phoenix traffic 15 floors below. "He's already scheduled meetings with all the department heads," Jennifer said, settling into the chair beside Sophia's desk. "Tom from accounting says Bradley spent 20 minutes explaining why diversity initiatives are market limitations." Sophia looked up from the client reports she'd been reviewing. "He doesn't understand that our success comes from authentic relationships, not demographic targeting." "I don't think understanding is the point," Jennifer replied carefully. "I think replacement is the point." The words hung between them, acknowledging what neither wanted to voice directly. Bradley's arrival wasn't about adding fresh perspectives. It was about installing family loyalty in a position of power, regardless of competence or understanding. "Robert built this company on innovation and authentic client relationships," Sophia said finally. "Surely he realizes that Bradley's approach would destroy everything we've worked to build." Jennifer's expression was sympathetic, but realistic. Robert also promised his late brother he'd give Bradley opportunities in the business. Family obligations sometimes override business judgment. Sophia's phone buzzed with a calendar notification. "Meeting with Bradley Sterling, tomorrow 2 p.m., client strategy review." The clinical language couldn't mask what both women understood. This wasn't a collaborative discussion. It was an evaluation by someone who'd already decided her methods were inadequate. "Whatever happens in that meeting," Jennifer said quietly, "remember that your clients trust you personally. That's not something that can be transferred to someone else, no matter what their last name is." After Jennifer left, Sophia remained in the empty office, looking out at the city lights stretching toward the mountains. Somewhere in that sprawl were the communities she served, the families whose healthcare access had improved because of EI, campaigns that honored their cultural values while providing vital services. Bradley Sterling might have the family name and Harvard credentials, but he'd never sat with a Navajo grandmother explaining why traditional healing practices and modern medicine could work together. He'd never earned the trust of a community that had every historical reason to distrust institutional promises. But in the corporate world, Sophia was beginning to understand, authenticity was often seen as a limitation rather than a strength. And tomorrow's meeting would determine whether 4 years of building bridges between worlds was about to be dismissed as niche strategy by someone who'd never had to earn anything he'd been given. The main conference room felt different when it housed the monthly board meeting. The circular table that usually fostered collaboration became an arena, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that normally provided inspiration now felt like walls. Sophia entered precisely on time, her presentation materials organized, and her client success metrics ready to defend 4 years of exceptional work. Bradley was already seated near the head of the table, a stack of documents arranged before him with theatrical precision. Robert Sterling occupied his usual position, flanked by the senior partners and department heads who shaped Sterling and Associates' strategic direction. The atmosphere carried a tension that made even routine monthly updates feel like corporate warfare. "Before we begin individual department reports," Robert announced, Bradley will present his initial assessment of our client's strategy direction. Sophia's stomach tightened. This wasn't the collaborative discussion she'd expected. It was an ambush disguised as a routine meeting. Bradley rose smoothly, his presentation beginning with what appeared to be careful research, but quickly revealed itself as systematic demolition. After reviewing our current client portfolio, I've identified several concerning patterns that limit our growth potential and market positioning. His first slide displayed a breakdown of Sterling & Associates' client base, with Southwest Healthcare, Network, Arizona Tech Innovations, and several other major accounts highlighted in red. These relationships, while generating adequate revenue, represent strategic limitations that prevent us from competing for higher-value contracts with more established markets. Sophia watched in growing disbelief as Bradley characterized her most successful relationships as limitations. The Southwest Healthcare Network contract alone generated $2.8 million annually, and the cultural competency required to secure it had positioned Sterling & Associates as the premier firm for diversity-focused marketing in the Southwest. Furthermore, Bradley continued, clicking to a slide titled Market Positioning Challenges. Our current approach relies heavily on niche targeting and specialized cultural knowledge. While this may have been effective in a smaller market, modern marketing requires scalable strategies that appeal to broader, more profitable demographics. Each word felt like a personal attack. Bradley wasn't just criticizing strategy, he was dismantling the foundation of everything Sophia had built. The reservation communities, Hispanic populations, and other specialized markets we're currently serving represent limited growth potential, Bradley said, his tone carrying the confidence of someone who'd never questioned his own assumptions. Our resources would generate higher returns focusing on suburban professionals, educated families, and established business networks. Sophia could remain silent no longer. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying controlled authority. "I'd like to address some factual inaccuracies in your assessment." Bradley's smile never wavered, but something predatory flickered in his eyes. "Of course. Input is always valuable." Sophia stood, moving to the presentation screen with the quiet confidence that had made her indispensable. The Southwest Healthcare Network campaign that you've characterized as niche targeting has achieved a 43% increase in patient engagement among underserved populations. This represents not just revenue generation, but measurable improvement in community health outcomes. She clicked to her own prepared slide, displaying engagement metrics that told a compelling story of success. The Arizona Tech Innovations contract, worth $1.9 million annually, was secured specifically because of our cultural competency. Their technology solutions target underserved communities, and they needed a marketing firm that understood those markets authentically. Bradley interrupted before she could continue. "That's exactly the problem. We're limiting ourselves to specialized markets when we could be competing for major national accounts. Fortune 500 companies don't need cultural specialists. They need proven traditional approaches backed by established networks." The condescension in his voice was unmistakable, but Sophia pressed forward. "These specialized markets represent some of the fastest-growing demographics in the Southwest. Our authentic relationships with these communities position us for expansion opportunities that firms relying on traditional approaches can't access." Authentic relationships. Bradley repeated the phrase as if it were quaint and outdated. "That's precisely the kind of thinking that's holding us back. Modern business requires efficiency, scalability, and broad market appeal. We can't build a major marketing firm on the foundation of niche cultural connections." The room fell silent. Every person present understood they were witnessing more than a strategic disagreement. This was a fundamental clash between two entirely different approaches to business and human relationships. Sophia felt the moment crystallizing around her. 4 years of work, dozens of successful campaigns, millions in generated revenue, and the trust of communities that had historically been underserved by corporate America. All of it was being dismissed as niche cultural connections by someone who'd never earned a single client relationship. "The metrics speak for themselves," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Our client retention rate is 97%. Our renewal rate exceeds industry standards by 30%. These aren't accidents. They're the result of authentic relationship building and cultural understanding." Bradley's expression shifted, revealing the entitled cruelty that privilege had nurtured. "Let me be clear about something, Sophia. The future of Sterling and Associates requires more traditional leadership with established networks. We need people who understand how business really works, not—" He paused, his smile becoming razor-sharp. "Not specialized approaches that limit our market position." The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Bradley delivered the blow that would change everything. "Frankly, I consider your current role expendable. The company needs more conventional leadership with proven track records in major markets. Your niche expertise simply isn't scalable for our growth objectives." The word expendable hit the room like a physical blow. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face, but her expression remained controlled. Around the table, senior executives shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Robert Sterling sat frozen, his expression revealing the internal war between family, loyalty, and business judgment. This was his moment to defend his most valuable account manager, to stand up for the principles that had built his company's reputation. Instead, he remained silent. Bradley continued, apparently energized by the devastation he'd inflicted. "We'll be restructuring client strategy to focus on more conventional approaches, traditional marketing principles, established networking, proven methodologies that appeal to broader markets." Sophia gathered her materials with deliberate precision, her movements controlled despite the humiliation coursing through her. "I see," she said, her voice carrying a dignity that made Bradley's cruelty seem even more appalling. "Is there anything else the board needs from me today?" "I think we've covered everything," Robert said finally, his voice barely audible. As Sophia walked toward the conference room door, she caught Jennifer's eye. Her colleague's expression carried a mixture of shock, anger, and something else, a recognition that what they'd just witnessed would have consequences far beyond this boardroom. The door closed behind Sophia with a soft click, but the sound echoed through the room like thunder. Bradley had won this battle, but he'd just declared war on the very relationships that kept Sterling and Associates profitable, and in the corporate world. Some wars were won, not by those who started them, but by those who understood the true value of what was being fought over. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The elevator descended in silence, carrying Sophia away from the boardroom where her professional worth had just been publicly declared expendable. Her reflection in the polished steel doors showed no trace of the humiliation burning through her chest. 4 years of corporate experience had taught her to maintain composure, even when everything inside was collapsing. By the time she reached her desk, word had already begun spreading through Sterling and Associates' open workspace. Conversations stopped as she passed, replaced by the careful silence of colleagues calculating their own survival chances. In the corporate ecosystem, proximity to a fallen executive could be professionally contagious. "Sophia." Jennifer appeared. Beside her desk within minutes, her voice carefully neutral despite the concern in her eyes. "How did the presentation go?" The question was office theater. Jennifer undoubtedly already knew the outcome through the informal intelligence network that kept ambitious employees informed. But Sophia played her part, understanding that even close friendships required careful navigation when careers were at stake. "Bradley has some interesting perspectives on client strategy," she replied, her tone professionally diplomatic. We'll see how his vision develops." Jennifer nodded, recognizing the coded language. Around them, the usual office bustle felt forced, as if everyone was working slightly too hard to appear uninvolved in whatever drama had just unfolded in the boardroom. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. "Thinking of you today, granddaughter. The mountains are especially beautiful this morning." The message, seemingly routine, carried deeper meaning. Her grandmother possessed an intuitive understanding of when Sophia faced challenges, and the reference to mountains was traditional encouragement, reminding her that some things endured regardless of temporary storms. She typed back, "The view from here is interesting too, learning new perspectives." Within an hour, the ripple effects extended beyond Sterling and Associates' walls. Phoenix's business community was smaller than it appeared, and news of boardroom dynamics traveled through professional networks with surprising speed. Maria Gonzalez was reviewing quarterly healthcare engagement reports when her phone rang. The caller was Rebecca Martinez, a fellow CMO whose company had considered hiring Sterling and Associates before choosing a competitor. "Maria, I just heard something concerning about Sterling and Associates." Rebecca's voice carried the careful tone of someone sharing sensitive intelligence. "Is it true they're restructuring their client strategy department?" Maria's attention sharpened. "Where did you hear that?" "Industry contacts. Apparently Robert Sterling's nephew is taking over client strategy, and there are questions about Sophia Yazzie's future with the company." The news hit Maria like cold water. Sophia wasn't just Southwest Healthcare Network's account manager. She was the reason Maria had chosen Sterling and Associates over larger, more established firms. The cultural understanding and authentic approach that Sophia brought to healthcare marketing had produced measurable improvements in community engagement. "Who's your source?" Maria asked. "Tom Bradley knows someone on their accounting team. Apparently, this nephew, Bradley Sterling, gave a presentation calling their current approach too niche and limiting. Autzka made some comments about needing more traditional leadership." Maria felt her professional instincts shifting into protective mode. Traditional leadership in marketing often meant culturally homogeneous approaches that ignored the diverse communities Southwest Healthcare Network specifically served. "Rebecca, I need to make some calls. Thank you for the heads up." After ending the conversation, Maria stared out her office window at Phoenix's sprawling landscape. Somewhere in that urban expansion were the reservation communities and Hispanic neighborhoods, where Sophia's campaigns had increased preventive healthcare participation by over 40%. Those results weren't achieved through traditional approaches. They required deep cultural understanding and authentic community relationships. Meanwhile, back at Sterling and Associates, Sophia was discovering the immediate social consequences of professional vulnerability. Colleagues who typically stopped by her desk for advice or casual conversation found reasons to avoid her workspace. The informal networks that made office life bearable, lunch invitations, project collaborations, casual consultations, evaporated as people instinctively distanced themselves from perceived career toxicity. Only Jennifer maintained normal interaction patterns, though even she was careful to avoid extended conversations that might attract unwanted attention. "Coffee?" Jennifer asked quietly, appearing at Sophia's desk as the afternoon wore on. They walked to the break room in professional silence, but once the door closed, Jennifer's careful composure cracked slightly. "What actually happened in there?" she asked, her voice low. Sophia measured her response carefully. Even close friendships required discretion when corporate politics were involved. Bradley made his vision for client strategy very clear. He believes the company needs to focus on more conventional approaches. Jennifer's expression darkened. "And he said, what about your role?" The word expendable still burned in Sophia's memory, but speaking it aloud would make the humiliation more real. "He has concerns about the sustainability of specialized cultural approaches." "That's corporate speak for, we don't value what you've built," Jennifer said, her political savvy cutting through diplomatic language. As they returned to their desks, Sophia noticed Robert Sterling emerging from his office. Their eyes met, briefly across the workspace, and she saw something unexpected in his expression. Not triumph or relief, but what looked like guilt. He quickly looked away, disappearing into the elevator without his usual rounds through the office. The afternoon stretched endlessly, punctuated by the normal rhythms of client calls and project deadlines that felt surreal given the morning's events. Sophia maintained her professional routine, responding to emails and reviewing campaign materials, but everything felt fragile, as if the foundation of her career had developed invisible cracks that could collapse at any moment. Her phone rang just before 5 o'clock. The caller ID showed David Begay, principal at Begay and Associates. David had been a quiet mentor throughout Sophia's career, offering guidance and industry perspective whenever she needed it. His timing, like her grandmother's earlier message, felt more than coincidental. "Sophia, how are you doing?" His voice carried warmth, but also the careful concern of someone who'd heard troubling news. "I'm well, David. It's been an interesting day." "I imagine so. Would you be available for coffee tomorrow? I'd like to discuss some opportunities that might interest you." The offer was professionally phrased, but Sophia understood the subtext. David had heard about her situation and was extending a potential lifeline. "I'd appreciate that," she replied. "Morning works well for me." After ending the call, Sophia gathered her materials and prepared to leave. The office was nearly empty, but she noticed Bradley Sterling's corner office still blazing with light. Through the glass walls, she could see him on a phone call, his gestures animated and confident. Whatever consequences might flow from today's boardroom confrontation, Bradley clearly believed he'd won a decisive victory. But as Sophia had learned from her grandmother's stories about patience and perseverance, some victories created their own unexpected vulnerabilities. The elevator carried her down through the building she'd helped make successful, past the lobby where Southwest Healthcare Network's logo was prominently displayed among Sterling and Associates' major clients. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she would call her grandmother and remember that some foundations, cultural identity, authentic relationships, and genuine competence couldn't be declared expendable by anyone, regardless of their family connections or inherited authority. The Phoenix evening was warm and clear, and somewhere in the distance, the mountains her grandmother had mentioned stood unchanged, indifferent to corporate politics, but permanent in ways that privilege and arrogance could never be. Maria Gonzalez arrived at Sterling and Associates the next morning with the polished composure of someone who'd built her career on direct confrontation with systemic problems. As CMO of Southwest Healthcare Network, she'd learned that authentic change required uncomfortable conversations, and yesterday's intelligence from Rebecca Martinez had prompted her to schedule this meeting immediately. "I'd like to speak with Sophia Yazzie about our upcoming campaign expansion," she told the receptionist, her tone carrying the authority of a $2.8 million annual contract. "Actually," the receptionist replied with obvious discomfort, "Mr. Bradley Sterling has taken over client strategy. He's available to meet with you right away." Maria's expression didn't change, but internally, alarms were sounding. In 3 years of working with Sterling and Associates, she'd never spoken with anyone except Sophia about Southwest Healthcare Network's campaigns. The relationship wasn't just professional, it was built on deep cultural understanding that had produced measurable improvements in community health outcomes. Bradley Sterling's office occupied a corner position with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Phoenix. When Maria entered, she found him arranging presentation materials with the confident energy of someone eager to prove himself. "Ms. Gonzalez," he said, rising with a practiced smile. "I'm delighted to finally meet. I've heard impressive things about Southwest Healthcare Network's market position." Maria settled into the chair across from his desk, her expression professionally neutral. "Where is Sophia? I specifically requested to work with her on our expansion planning." Bradley's smile never wavered, but something calculating flickered in his eyes. Sophia is transitioning to other responsibilities as we restructure our client strategy approach. I'll be personally overseeing your account going forward. The statement was delivered with such casual confidence that Maria momentarily wondered if she'd misunderstood the situation. But her years of navigating healthcare bureaucracy had taught her to recognize institutional power plays disguised as routine business decisions. "I see," she said carefully. "And what experience do you have with healthcare marketing in underserved communities?" Bradley launched into his presentation with enthusiasm that couldn't mask his fundamental misunderstanding of Southwest Healthcare Network's mission. His slides focused on market expansion opportunities and demographic optimization, language that revealed someone who viewed healthcare as a commodity rather than a service addressing community needs. "Your current campaigns are limiting growth potential by focusing too narrowly on reservation populations and low-income Hispanic communities," he explained, clicking to a slide titled "Revenue Optimization Through Market Repositioning." "We should be targeting suburban families, educated professionals, demographics with higher healthcare spending capacity." Maria felt her professional composure slipping. "Mr. Sterling, Southwest Healthcare Network specifically serves underserved communities. That's not a market limitation. It's our organizational mission." Bradley nodded as if she'd made his point for him. "Exactly. But from a marketing perspective, we can position your services to appeal to broader demographics while maintaining your current community focus. It's about expanding your market reach." "Our mission isn't market positioning," Maria replied, her voice carrying the controlled authority of someone whose patience was evaporating. "We provide healthcare access to communities that have been historically underserved by institutional medicine." Sophia understood that our campaigns needed to build trust within these communities, not attract different demographics. "Trust is important," Bradley agreed, apparently missing the fundamental disconnect. "But modern marketing requires scalable approaches. We can generate higher engagement rates targeting educated, affluent populations who actively seek preventive healthcare services." Maria stared at him in growing disbelief. "The educated, affluent populations you're describing already have healthcare access. Our mission is serving people who don't." Bradley's expression suggested he viewed her commitment to underserved populations as a business limitation requiring diplomatic management. "Of course, community service is admirable, but we need to balance social responsibility with sustainable revenue growth." The statement revealed such complete misunderstanding of Southwest Healthcare Network's values that Maria realized this conversation was pointless. Bradley Sterling might understand traditional marketing metrics, but he had no comprehension of the cultural sensitivity and community trust that made healthcare initiatives successful in underserved populations. "Mr. Sterling," she said, rising from her chair, "I need to ask directly. What is Sophia Yazzie's current status with Sterling and Associates?" Bradley's practiced smile faltered slightly. "As I mentioned, we're restructuring our client strategy approach. Sophia's specialized methods aren't aligned with our growth objectives going forward." "Specialized methods?" Maria's voice carried dangerous calm. "You mean her cultural competency and authentic relationship building?" "I mean her niche focus on limited demographics," Bradley replied, his tone becoming defensive. "Modern marketing requires broader appeal, not narrow targeting based on cultural factors." Maria had heard enough. 3 years of working with Sophia had produced campaigns that increased patient engagement by over 40% while honoring community values and traditional healing practices. Those results weren't achieved through broader appeal. They required deep understanding of the communities being served. "I see," she said, gathering her materials with deliberate precision. "I think I understand Sterling and Associates' new direction." Bradley apparently interpreted her controlled tone as acceptance. "Excellent. I'll prepare a revised campaign strategy that positions Southwest Healthcare Network for significant market expansion. That won't be necessary, Maria replied, her voice carrying finality. I'll need to reassess our partnership with Sterling and Associates. The statement hit Bradley like cold water. Reassess? Is there a problem with our service approach? Maria paused at his office door, turning back with an expression that made her position unmistakably clear. Mr. Sterling, Southwest Healthcare Network won't work with a company that doesn't value its best talent. Sophia Yazzie built campaigns that honored our communities while delivering measurable results. If Sterling and Associates considers that expendable, then we'll find partners who don't. After Maria left, Bradley sat in his corner office staring at the campaign materials he'd prepared. The meeting hadn't gone as planned, but he convinced himself that client resistance was normal during leadership transitions. Maria Gonzalez would adjust to working with more conventional approaches once she understood the benefits of broader market positioning. But 3 floors below, in the parking garage, Maria was already dialing Sophia's direct number. When Sophia answered, Maria's first words cut straight to the core of the situation. Sophia, I just met with your replacement. We need to talk. The phone call would be brief and decisive. By the time Maria reached her own office, she'd already made the decision that would transform a workplace humiliation into the first domino in a chain reaction Bradley Sterling never saw coming. Some client relationships, Maria understood, were built on more than contracts and quarterly reviews. They were built on trust, cultural understanding, and the irreplaceable value of authentic human connection. And those relationships belonged to the people who'd earned them, not the institutions that employed them. The formal termination letter arrived at Sterling and Associates at precisely 9 a.m. on Thursday morning, delivered by courier with the kind of official weight that made receptionists nervous. Robert Sterling was reviewing quarterly projections when his assistant knocked on his door, her expression carrying the particular strain of someone delivering bad news to authority. Mr. Sterling, this just arrived from Southwest Healthcare Network. It's marked urgent. Robert opened the envelope with casual confidence that evaporated the moment he began reading. Maria Gonzalez's language was professionally diplomatic, but unmistakably final. After careful consideration of recent changes in account management, Southwest Healthcare Network has decided to terminate our marketing services contract with Sterling and Associates, effective immediately. The letter continued with devastating precision. This decision reflects our assessment that Sterling and Associates' new client strategy direction is incompatible with our organizational mission and community values. We cannot maintain partnerships with firms that do not recognize the irreplaceable value of cultural competency and authentic community relationships. But the final paragraph delivered the most damaging blow. We specifically cite the treatment of Sophia Yazzie, whose exceptional work built the foundation of our successful partnership, as indicative of Sterling and Associates' failure to value its most capable talent. Robert read the letter 3 times, each review making the financial implications more devastating. Southwest Healthcare Network represented $8 million in annual revenue, nearly 15% of Sterling and Associates' total client base. But beyond the immediate financial impact, Maria's explicit mention of Sophia's treatment would spread through Phoenix's business community like wildfire. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Sterling, Michael Thompson from Arizona Tech Innovations is on line 1. He says it's urgent regarding their account status. Robert's stomach dropped. Michael Thompson's company generated $9 million annually, and his reputation as a progressive, values-driven CEO made him precisely the kind of client who would care about workforce equity issues. Michael, Robert answered, attempting to project calm confidence. How can I help you? Robert, I'm calling about some concerning rumors regarding Sophia Yazzie's status with your company. Michael's voice carried the careful tone of someone seeking clarification while hoping the rumors were false. I've heard she's being removed from client strategy roles. The directness of the question left no room for diplomatic evasion. We're restructuring our client strategy department to optimize our service delivery approach. That's not what I asked, Michael replied, his tone sharpening. Is Sophia Yazzie still handling our account? Robert found himself trapped between family loyalty and business survival. My nephew Bradley Sterling is taking over client strategy direction. He brings fresh perspectives from his Harvard MBA program. The silence on the line stretched uncomfortably before Michael responded. Robert, Sophia Yazzie built campaigns that helped us expand into underserved technology markets while maintaining community trust. Her cultural understanding and authentic approach aren't fresh perspectives, they're irreplaceable competencies. Bradley has extensive experience with traditional marketing approaches that can scale more effectively, Robert said, the words feeling hollow even as he spoke them. Traditional approaches? Michael's voice carried dangerous calm. Robert, Arizona Tech Innovations specifically chose Sterling & Associates because of Sophia's cultural competency. We serve diverse communities that require authentic understanding, not traditional marketing demographics. Robert heard the implicit threat in Michael's tone but pressed forward. I'm confident Bradley can maintain the quality of service you've come to expect. Based on what evidence? Michael asked. What experience does your nephew have with community-based technology initiatives? What relationships has he built with underserved populations? What measurable results has he achieved? With diverse market segments? Each question highlighted Bradley's complete lack of relevant experience. Robert realized he was defending nepotism with nothing but family connection and Ivy League credentials. Michael, I understand your concerns, but I'm confident in our restructuring decision. Then you've made my decision easier, Michael replied. Arizona Tech Innovations will be terminating our contract with Sterling & Associates. We'll be seeking marketing partners who value competence over connections. The line went dead, leaving Robert staring at his phone in stunned silence. In less than 24 hours, Sterling & Associates had lost over $7 million in annual revenue, with both departing clients explicitly citing the treatment of Sophia Yazzie as a decisive factor. Meanwhile, 3 floors below, Sophia was processing the emotional complexity of client loyalty she'd never expected. Maria's phone call had been brief, but transformative. Sophia, I've terminated our contract with Sterling & Associates. When you're ready to discuss your next opportunity, call me immediately. Jennifer appeared at Sophia's desk, her expression carrying news that was clearly circulating through the office grapevine. Michael Thompson just called Bradley directly. The conversation was heated and brief. How brief? Sophia asked. Brief enough that Bradley's already called an emergency meeting with his uncle. Through the glass walls of Robert Sterling's office, they could see an animated conversation between uncle and nephew. Bradley's gestures were defensive and increasingly desperate, while Robert's body language suggested someone confronting the devastating consequences of his own choices. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from David Begay. Coffee meeting moved to this afternoon. We need to discuss partnership opportunities immediately. Bring your client portfolio. The message carried implications beyond a job offer. David was suggesting something more significant, a business partnership that would give Sophia ownership rather than employment, control rather than vulnerability. Jennifer, Sophia said quietly, I need to ask you something important. How carefully have you been documenting what's happened here? Jennifer's expression shifted, revealing she'd been thinking strategically about her own position. Very carefully. Every meeting, every decision, every client reaction. I've learned that in corporate politics, documentation is survival. Would you be willing to share that documentation if needed? With you? Absolutely. With Sterling & Associates legal team defending Bradley's decisions? Jennifer's smile carried sharp edges. That would depend on my employment situation. Around them, the office atmosphere was shifting perceptibly. Colleagues who'd maintained careful distance were beginning to show interest in Sophia's situation, not out of loyalty, but because her client relationships might represent their own career lifelines if Sterling and Associates continued losing major accounts. By afternoon, word of the Southwest Healthcare Network and Arizona Tech Innovations departures had spread throughout Phoenix's business community. Other Sterling and Associates clients were beginning to ask pointed questions about account management. Changes and potential new clients were quietly withdrawing from proposal processes. Robert Sterling faced a crisis that threatened everything he'd built over 20 years. The nephew he'd installed to honor family obligations was destroying the company through incompetence and arrogance. And the employee whose worth Bradley had declared expendable was proving to be the foundation upon which Sterling and Associates' reputation rested. But some lessons, Sophia reflected as she prepared for her meeting with David Begay, could only be learned through painful experience. Robert Sterling was about to discover that authentic relationships with clients, employees, and communities couldn't be replaced by family connections or inherited privilege. The question now wasn't whether Sterling and Associates would survive Bradley's leadership, but whether Robert would recognize the truth before losing everything his deceased brother's son was determined to destroy. Michael Thompson's industry article appeared in Phoenix Business Review on Friday morning, with a headline that sent shockwaves through the local marketing community. When Nepotism Trumps Competence, a case study in corporate self-destruction. The piece didn't mention Sterling and Associates by name, but every detail made the target unmistakably clear. Recently, a prominent Phoenix marketing firm chose to replace proven expertise with inherited privilege, Michael wrote. The results offer a cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of prioritizing family connections over client relationships and cultural competency. The article detailed Arizona Tech Innovations' experience with traditional marketing approaches that ignored community values and authentic relationship building. Michael's conclusion was devastating. Companies considering marketing partnerships should carefully evaluate whether their prospective firms value competence or connections. The difference will determine not just campaign success, but organizational integrity. By 10 a.m., the article had been shared across LinkedIn by dozens of Phoenix business leaders. By noon, it was circulating in healthcare, technology, and nonprofit networks throughout the Southwest. Michael Thompson's reputation as a principled, successful CEO gave his criticism weight that would influence purchasing decisions across multiple industries. Robert Sterling discovered the article's existence when his phone began ringing with calls from concerned clients, potential partners, and industry colleagues. Each conversation followed the same devastating pattern. Robert, is it true that you've removed Sophia Yazzie from client strategy roles? The third such call came from Patricia Williams, CEO of Desert Community Foundation, representing $4 million in annual contracts. Robert, we've worked with Sophia on community engagement campaigns for 2 years. Her cultural understanding and authentic approach have been essential to our success with diverse donor populations. Patricia, let me assure you that Sterling and Associates remains committed to serving your organization's needs, Robert replied, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. That's not what I'm hearing from my network, Patricia said. The word is that you've replaced Sophia with your nephew, who has no experience with community-based marketing. Is that accurate? Robert found himself trapped between truth and family loyalty. We've restructured our client strategy approach to incorporate fresh perspectives. Fresh perspectives from someone with no relevant experience? Patricia's tone carried the disappointment of someone whose trust had been violated. Robert, our foundation serves underrepresented communities. We need marketing partners who understand those populations authentically, not theoretically. The conversation ended with Patricia announcing that Desert Community Foundation would be reviewing our partnership options, effective immediately. Meanwhile, Bradley Sterling was discovering that crisis management required skills Harvard Business School hadn't taught him. His morning had been consumed by increasingly hostile client calls, each one explicitly requesting to work with Sophia Yazzie rather than accepting his leadership. "This is temporary resistance to change," he told his uncle during their emergency meeting. "Once clients understand the benefits of conventional marketing approaches, they'll adapt." Robert stared at quarterly projections that showed potential losses exceeding $8 million if current trends continued. "Bradley, we've lost 3 major clients in 48 hours. This isn't resistance to change. This is business suicide." "The clients are being unreasonable," Bradley insisted, his privilege preventing him from accepting responsibility. "They're too attached to Sophia's niche approaches to recognize the value of broader market strategies." "Niche approaches?" Robert's voice carried growing desperation. "Bradley, those niche approaches generated over 40% of our annual revenue. Sophia built relationships that sustained this company for 4 years." But Bradley remained convinced that client loyalty was transferable, that his Ivy League credentials and family connections could replace years of authentic relationship building. "We need to show strength, not weakness. Firing Sophia would demonstrate that Sterling and Associates stands behind its strategic decisions." The suggestion revealed such fundamental misunderstanding of the crisis that Robert realized his nephew was incapable of learning from devastating mistakes. Bradley saw client departures as temporary inconveniences rather than consequences of his own incompetence and arrogance. That afternoon brought news that transformed client concerns into industry-wide reputation damage. Rebecca Martinez, whose company had considered hiring Sterling and Associates before choosing a competitor, published her own LinkedIn post that went viral within hours. "Dodged a bullet by not hiring Sterling and Associates." Recent events confirm that cultural competency and authentic relationship building are apparently considered expendable by their leadership. Companies serving diverse markets should choose partners who value expertise over nepotism. The post generated dozens of comments from business leaders sharing their own concerns about Sterling and Associates' direction. Each comment amplified the damage, creating a cascade effect that would influence purchasing decisions throughout the Southwest business community. Sophia learned about the viral criticism during her coffee meeting with David Begay at a downtown cafe overlooking the mountains her grandmother had mentioned just days earlier. David's expression carried the satisfaction of someone who'd anticipated exactly this outcome. "The industry response is even stronger than I expected," he said, showing her the LinkedIn discussions on his phone. "Your clients aren't just leaving Sterling and Associates, they're warning their networks about the company's judgment and values." Sophia studied the comments, recognizing names from across Phoenix's business community. CEOs, marketing directors, nonprofit leaders, and community organization heads were all expressing concerns about Sterling and Associates' treatment of her. The support was overwhelming but also surreal. She'd become the center of an industry-wide discussion about workplace equity and cultural competency. "David, I appreciate all the support, but I'm not looking for revenge. I just want to continue doing meaningful work." "This isn't about revenge," David replied, his tone carrying the wisdom of someone who'd navigated similar challenges. "This is about accountability. Bradley Sterling declared you expendable, but the market is proving that authentic relationships and cultural competency are actually irreplaceable." His phone buzzed with a call from someone at Sterling and Associates. David glanced at the screen and smiled grimly. Robert Sterling. Probably wondering if I'd be interested in acquiring their remaining client base at a discount. As if summoned by their conversation, Sophia's phone rang with Jennifer's number. "Sophia, you need to know. Bradley just held an all-hands meeting, announcing that the client departures are temporary market adjustments. He's blaming external factors and economic conditions." The news didn't surprise Sophia, but it confirmed that Bradley remained incapable of accepting responsibility for his own actions. What was the staff reaction? Let's just say that resumes are being updated throughout the office. When senior management blames external factors for losing 30% of the client base in 1 week, people start making career contingency plans. After ending the call, Sophia looked out at Phoenix's sprawling landscape, thinking about the communities she'd served and the relationships she'd built. Somewhere in that urban expansion were reservation communities with improved healthcare access, technology programs serving underrepresented populations, and nonprofit organizations with more effective donor engagement, all because someone had valued cultural competency over conventional approaches. Bradley Sterling had called her expendable, but the market was proving that some kinds of value couldn't be replaced by family connections or inherited privilege. The avalanche of client departures wasn't just business consequence, it was vindication of everything she'd worked to build. And somewhere in Sterling and Associates' downtown headquarters, Robert Sterling was finally beginning to understand that his nephew's arrogance was going to cost him everything he'd spent 20 years creating. Robert Sterling stood in his corner office at 6:30 a.m. on Monday morning, watching the sunrise paint Phoenix's skyline in shades of gold and crimson that reminded him of better times, when his company's future had seemed as limitless as the desert horizon. The weekend had brought no respite from the crisis Bradley had created. Instead, it had delivered 2 more client termination letters and a scathing review on Glassdoor from a former employee describing Sterling and Associates as a company that values family connections over talent and integrity. The financial damage was no longer theoretical. $8.2 million in annual revenue had evaporated in 7 days, representing 37% of Sterling and Associates' client base. The remaining contracts were under review by nervous clients who'd watched their peers flee en masse. Most devastating of all, the company's reputation for cultural competency and authentic relationship building, built over 20 years, had been destroyed by 1 week of Bradley's leadership. His intercom buzzed with his assistant's voice. "Mr. Sterling, your nephew is here for the 9 o'clock meeting." Bradley entered with the confident stride of someone who remained convinced that external forces were responsible for Sterling and Associates' problems. He carried a folder thick with what appeared to be strategic planning documents, his expression suggesting he viewed this meeting as an opportunity to present solutions rather than accept accountability. "Uncle Robert, I've prepared a comprehensive recovery strategy," he announced, settling into the chair across from Robert's desk. "The client departures represent temporary market volatility that we can overcome through aggressive new business development." Robert studied his nephew's face, searching for any sign that Bradley understood the magnitude of what he'd destroyed. "Bradley, we've lost over $8 million in revenue. Our reputation in the Phoenix business community is in ruins. Potential clients are withdrawing from proposal processes because they've heard about our treatment of Sophia Yazzie." "That's exactly the problem," Bradley replied, his tone carrying the frustrated authority of someone whose expertise was being questioned. "We're being held hostage by one employee's personal relationships with clients. This proves we need to restructure more aggressively." The response revealed such complete disconnection from reality that Robert felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of his nephew. This wasn't just inexperience or poor judgment. This was willful blindness to consequences that threatened to destroy everything Robert had built. "Bradley, those personal relationships generated nearly 40% of our revenue. Sophia built client loyalty through cultural understanding and authentic service. You called her expendable, and our clients are proving you wrong by taking their business elsewhere." "They're overreacting," Bradley insisted, opening his folder to reveal charts and projections that ignored the current crisis entirely. "Once they realize that conventional marketing approaches can deliver superior results, they'll return. We just need to show strength by fully committing to our new direction." "New direction?" Robert's voice carried dangerous calm. "Our new direction has destroyed the company in 1 week." Bradley's expression shifted, revealing the entitled fury that privilege produced when challenged. The problem isn't our strategy, it's your failure to support it fully. If you'd backed my decisions instead of allowing Sophia to undermine our restructuring, clients would have accepted the changes. The accusation hit Robert like a physical blow. Bradley was actually blaming him for the crisis, suggesting that loyalty to family required sacrificing business survival. "Let me be very clear about something," Bradley continued, his voice carrying the dangerous confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. "To salvage this situation, you need to fire Sophia Yazzie immediately. Make a public statement that Sterling and Associates stands behind its strategic leadership. Show the market that we won't be manipulated by employee grievances." The demand revealed the full extent of Bradley's disconnection from reality. Even now, facing potential bankruptcy, he believed that removing Sophia would somehow restore client confidence rather than complete the company's destruction. Robert's phone buzzed with a call from David Begay. The timing felt symbolic. While Bradley demanded Sophia's firing, her mentor was likely calling to discuss business opportunities that would benefit from Sterling and Associates' collapse. "Bradley," Robert said, setting down his phone without answering, "I need you to understand something fundamental. Sophia Yazzie isn't the problem. You are. Your arrogance, your cultural insensitivity, your complete inability to understand what made this company successful. You've destroyed relationships that took years to build." "I modernized outdated approaches," Bradley began, but Robert cut him off. "You declared our most valuable employee expendable and insulted the cultural competency that our clients specifically valued. You treated years of authentic relationship building as if it were disposable. And now you want me to compound that disaster by actually firing the person our remaining clients are demanding to work with?" Bradley's face flushed with the rage of someone whose authority was being questioned. "She's manipulating clients against company leadership. This is corporate sabotage." "This is consequences," Robert replied, his voice carrying 20 years of business experience. "Sophia didn't have to manipulate anyone. Our clients left because they experienced your leadership firsthand and found it inadequate." The moment had arrived when Robert Sterling faced the choice that would determine whether Sterling and Associates survived or joined the countless companies destroyed by nepotism and privilege. His promise to his late brother weighed against his responsibility to 57 employees whose livelihoods depended on his decisions. "Bradley, effective immediately, you're being removed from all client-facing responsibilities. You'll be transitioning to an internal operations role with no external contact." "You can't do this," Bradley said, his voice carrying the shock of someone experiencing consequences for the first time. "I'm family. You promised my father you'd give me opportunities." "I promised him I'd give you opportunities," Robert replied, feeling something like relief as he finally chose principle over family politics. "I didn't promise I'd let you destroy everything I've built while learning from your mistakes." As Bradley stormed out, Robert picked up his phone and dialed a number he should have called days earlier. When Sophia answered, her voice carried the professional composure that had made her irreplaceable. "Sophia, this is Robert Sterling. I need to discuss your future with Sterling and Associates. Are you available to meet this afternoon?" But even as he spoke, Robert suspected that Sophia's future lay elsewhere, and that his nephew's week of destructive leadership had cost him more than clients and revenue. It had cost him the opportunity to retain the talent that had made Sterling and Associates successful. Some mistakes, he was learning, created consequences that couldn't be undone by family loyalty or belated recognition of competence over connections. Sophia arrived at Sterling and Associates that Tuesday afternoon with the quiet confidence of someone who understood her own worth regardless of the circumstances. The elevator carried her to the 15th floor one final time, past the familiar workspace where colleagues now watched her with expressions mixing admiration, envy, and uncertainty about their own futures. Robert Sterling's office felt different during this meeting, smaller somehow, as if the weight of his recent decisions had diminished both the space and the man within it. He rose when she entered, his movements carrying the careful precision of someone navigating a crisis largely of his own making. "Sophia, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." She settled into the chair across from his desk, noting the financial reports scattered across its surface, documents that undoubtedly detailed the devastating consequences of the past week's events. Robert's expression carried something she'd never seen before, genuine remorse mixed with desperate hope. "I want to begin with an apology," he said, his voice lacking its usual executive authority. "What happened in last week's board meeting was unacceptable. Bradley's comments about your role were inappropriate and inaccurate. I should have defended you immediately." Sophia listened without responding, recognizing both the sincerity and the calculated timing of his words. Robert Sterling was apologizing not just because it was right, but because his company was collapsing, and she represented his only hope for salvation. "Furthermore," Robert continued, reaching for a formal document on his desk, "I'm offering you the position of Vice President of Client Relations, effective immediately. The role includes a 40% salary increase, equity participation in the company, and complete authority over client strategy decisions." The offer was substantial, more than Sophia had imagined possible just 2 weeks earlier. VP of Client Relations would give her the executive authority she'd earned but never been granted, along with financial compensation that reflected her actual value to the organization. Additionally, Robert said, sliding another document across the desk, "This is a public statement I'm prepared to release acknowledging your irreplaceable contributions to Sterling & Associates and clarifying that recent client departures resulted from strategic mistakes in our restructuring approach." Ooh. Sophia read the statement, noting its careful language that accepted responsibility while avoiding direct criticism of Bradley. It was corporate diplomacy at its finest, acknowledging error without admitting legal liability. The statement also announces Bradley's transition to internal operations, removing him from all client-facing responsibilities, Robert added. "You would have complete autonomy over client relationships going forward." The offer represented everything Sophia had worked toward during her 4 years at Sterling & Associates: executive authority, financial recognition, public vindication, and the guarantee that Bradley Sterling would never again interfere with her client relationships. It was corporate justice served on a silver platter. But as she studied Robert's desperate expression, Sophia realized that accepting vindication from Sterling & Associates would always carry the shadow of this week's humiliation. She would be the employee who'd been called expendable and then rescued by client loyalty rather than management recognition of her worth. Her phone buzzed with a text from David Begay. "Partnership paperwork ready when you are. 3 major clients already committed to transferring. Your choice, but the door is open." The message reminded her of yesterday's conversation at David's downtown office, where he'd outlined a partnership opportunity that would make her co-owner of Begay and Associates rather than an employee of any organization. David's firm specialized in authentic multicultural marketing, serving exactly the communities and values that had made Sophia successful. The partnership would be 50-50, David had explained. Your client relationships and cultural expertise, combined with my operational infrastructure and industry connections, we'd be building something new rather than trying to fix something broken. The partnership offer represented more than just career advancement. It meant ownership rather than employment, control rather than vulnerability, and the opportunity to build something that reflected her values from the ground up. "Robert," Sophia said finally, setting his documents back on the desk, "I appreciate the offer and the apology. Both are more than I expected a week ago." His expression brightened with hope that she immediately tempered with her next words. "But I need to ask you something directly. If Bradley weren't your nephew, would this crisis have happened?" Robert's silence stretched uncomfortably as he processed the implications of her question. They both understood that competency-based hiring would never have brought someone with Bradley's background into a senior client strategy role. "If I accept this position," Sophia continued, "I'd always be the employee who was nearly fired because family politics trumped business judgment. That's not the foundation I want for my career going forward. Sophia, you'd have complete authority over client strategy. Bradley would have no influence over your decisions." "Until the next family obligation arises," she replied gently. "Robert, you built an excellent company, but this week proved that family considerations can override business judgment even when the stakes are catastrophic." Robert's expression revealed his understanding that he was losing more than an employee. He was losing the foundation of everything he'd built over 20 years. "What would change your mind?" The question hung between them as Sophia considered whether there was any offer that could overcome the fundamental trust that had been broken. Robert Sterling had chosen family loyalty over defending his most valuable employee, and that choice couldn't be undone by salary increases or job titles. "Nothing," she said finally, her voice carrying the gentle finality of someone who'd already made peace with her decision. "But I want you to know that I hold no personal animosity. You built something remarkable here, and I learned valuable lessons during my time at Sterling and Associates." As she stood to leave, Robert made one final attempt. "The clients who've left, Maria Gonzalez, Michael Thompson, Patricia Williams, they've all indicated they'd return if you were leading their accounts." Sophia paused at his office door, recognizing both the accuracy of his statement and the desperation behind it. "They might, but they trusted me personally, not Sterling and Associates as an organization. That trust travels with me wherever I go." The words carried implications that Robert clearly understood. Sophia's client relationships weren't assets that Sterling and Associates owned. They were personal connections built through years of authentic service and cultural understanding. "Where will you go?" he asked. "David Begay has offered me a partnership at his firm. We share similar values about authentic community service and cultural competency." Robert nodded slowly, recognizing that he was watching the future of multicultural marketing in Phoenix walk out of his office forever. Bradley's declaration that Sophia was expendable had proven catastrophically wrong, but the recognition had come too late to prevent the very consequences that might have been avoided with earlier courage. After Sophia left, Robert Sterling sat in his corner office watching the Phoenix skyline that had once represented unlimited possibility. Somewhere in that urban expanse were the communities Sophia had served, the clients she'd cultivated, and the business opportunities that would now flow to her new partnership rather than his struggling firm. The choice between family loyalty and business survival had seemed complex a week ago. Now, faced with the devastating consequences of prioritizing blood over competence, Robert understood that some decisions carried costs too high to justify with sentiment or obligation. His nephew had called Sophia Yazzie expendable. The market had proven that assessment disastrously wrong. And now Robert Sterling faced the lonely task of rebuilding a reputation that 20 years of authentic relationship building couldn't restore. Once trust had been broken by a single week of privileged arrogance. 6 months later, the morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Begay and Associates reflected off awards and recognition certificates that told the story of what authentic relationships could build when given proper foundation. A reminder that nepotism and cultural insensitivity could destroy decades of reputation building in a matter of weeks. After her presentation, Sophia was approached by dozens of business leaders seeking partnerships, advice, or simply expressing appreciation for her approach to community-engaged marketing. Among them was Patricia Williams from Desert Community Foundation, whose organization had become one of Begay and Associates' most successful partnerships. "Sophia, your keynote was exactly what this industry needed to hear," Patricia said, her expression carrying genuine admiration. "You've proven that doing the right thing and achieving business success aren't contradictory. They're mutually reinforcing when approached with integrity and cultural understanding. But the most significant conversation came when Robert Sterling approached her during the networking reception. His expression carried the weight of someone who'd spent 5 years processing the full implications of his choices during the crisis that had destroyed his company's reputation. "Sophia, congratulations on your success. Your keynote was illuminating," he said, his voice lacking the executive confidence she remembered from their Sterling and Associates days. "Thank you, Robert. I hope you found the content useful for your consulting work." Robert's smile was rueful. Consulting work that largely involves explaining to clients why they need exactly the kind of cultural competency that you pioneered. The irony isn't lost on me. They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Robert continued. "I want you to know that I understand what I lost when you left Sterling and Associates. Not just revenue or client relationships, but the foundation of everything that made the company successful." Sophia studied his expression, recognizing genuine remorse, mixed with the professional calculation of someone hoping to rebuild burned bridges. "Robert, you built something significant with Sterling and Associates. The cultural competency work we're doing today builds on foundations you helped establish." "But Bradley destroyed it all in 1 week," Robert said, his voice carrying the bitter recognition of someone who'd chosen family loyalty over business judgment at precisely the wrong moment. "I should have defended you immediately when he called you expendable. That choice cost me everything I'd spent 20 years building." The admission carried more weight than Robert probably intended. His failure to defend Sophia during Bradley's attack had revealed fundamental weaknesses in his leadership. The willingness to sacrifice competence for family politics, to remain silent when justice required courage. "We all make choices based on the information and pressures available at the time," Sophia replied diplomatically. "The important thing is learning from those experiences." Robert nodded, apparently recognizing that forgiveness didn't necessarily mean renewed professional relationships. Bradley never understood what he'd destroyed. Even now, he blames external factors for Sterling and Associates' collapse rather than accepting responsibility for his own actions. The information didn't surprise Sophia. Bradley's privilege had insulated him from consequences throughout his life, making it unlikely that he'd develop genuine self-awareness even after experiencing professional failure. "Where is he now?" she asked, more from curiosity than concern. "Last I heard, he was working for a mid-sized consulting firm in Austin, handling internal operations with strict instructions never to interact with clients. His reputation for cultural insensitivity and arrogance follows him wherever he goes." As Robert walked away, Sophia reflected on the complete transformation of Phoenix's marketing landscape since Bradley's catastrophic week of leadership. Cultural competency had evolved from niche specialization to industry standard, while firms that ignored diverse community needs found themselves increasingly irrelevant in markets that valued authentic relationship building. Her phone buzzed, with a text from her grandmother. "Watched your speech online, granddaughter. Your great-grandfather would be proud to see you honoring our values while building bridges to the modern world." The message reminded her that success wasn't just professional achievement. It was the continuation of cultural traditions that emphasized community service, authentic relationships, and the patient strength required to build something lasting rather than pursuing temporary advantage. That evening, as Sophia reviewed partnership proposals from organizations across the Southwest, she understood that Bradley Sterling's declaration had inadvertently created the space for something better than what she'd lost. His arrogance had freed her from the limitations of working within someone else's vision, enabling her to build foundations that reflected her values while serving communities that needed authentic understanding. The Phoenix skyline glittered beyond her office windows, stretching toward mountains that had watched countless cycles of growth, change, and renewal. 5 years ago, she'd been fighting for recognition within Sterling and Associates' corporate hierarchy. Tonight, She was setting strategic direction for a firm that had become the Southwest's premier example of how cultural authenticity and business success could strengthen each other. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.